Welcome back to the Pachera Financials YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the very taboo I word. Yes, it's called inflation. Now, you've probably been hearing a lot about inflation lately because a lot of people are talking about how high inflation is. Interesting fact, inflation is actually not new, and inflation actually happens every day. It's been happening for as long as we can remember. Inflation is the general increase of prices over time. This is why you think about back in the day, back in the 20s and the 50s and the 60s, things were much cheaper than they are today. That's because everyday prices are gradually increasing. However, inflation can become a problem when prices start to increase too fast. That means that we as consumers now are seeing the effects of these price increases at everyday places, like at the grocery store, airline tickets. Inflation is hitting all of us. In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about the top 3 things that you should do to combat inflation. Okay, so one of the biggest things that you want to focus on when you're in a period of high inflation is cash flow. Cash flow is basically managing how much cash your business is putting out and how much cash your business is taking in. Now, cash flow is going to be important because you may start to see changes in your cash flow due to high inflation. That's because now your vendors may be charging higher prices, your supplies, your materials might be costing more, and this can really eat into your bottom line. You want to make sure that you're paying close attention to your cash flow analysis. Make sure that you check every month how much actual cash do you have on hand. This is why it's going to be important to have something as simple as bookkeeping in your business so that you can pull cash flow reports, so you can see like how much cash do I have in my business bank account at the end of the month. Start there. Start really paying attention to these numbers because you want to know where can you cut back on expenses, what prices are increasing the most, and it'll really help you in pricing your products and services. So with that being said, the next thing that you really want to focus on is make sure that you have some type of pricing strategy to keep your prices in line with the market. What that means is that inflation, generally, everything is more expensive. So yes, consumers have less buying power. However, you still want to make sure that you're pricing your products and services to not only be competitive, but to be realistic with the current market. So if your materials, if your supplies, if the cost of your contractors and shipping and delivery, if all of these things have gone up in price, you need to take note of that to see if you're going to need to increase any of the prices of your own products and services. Now, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because you don't want to increase your prices too much and turn people away. As we said, inflation impacts everyone, so consumers will have less purchasing power. So don't increase your prices too much where you're scaring away all of your current or prospective customers, but also keep in mind that you're still running a business. And if your cost to produce your products and services increases, then generally you may want to consider also increasing the price of your services. And lastly, during periods of high inflation, keep in mind that this is when the federal government will start increasing interest rates. What that basically means is that the cost of borrowing money is going to increase. They usually do this to combat inflation so that people are less likely to take out more money, less likely to spend more money, which can essentially decrease demand and hopefully decrease prices. Now, this is a hypothetical thing and it gets really complicated with economics. What you basically need to know is that the cost of you borrowing money, so that means any business credit cards, that means any business loans, any lines of credit, or anything like that that your business may do, the cost of that interest rate that you will pay on any of those loans or lines of credit will correlate with the federal government interest rate. Now, the federal government is now increasing their interest rates, making it harder for banks and lenders, or making it more costly for banks and lenders to lend out money. Now, when it's more costly for banks and lenders to lend out money, they will increase your interest rate. Hence, the increased interest rates due to inflation. Now, what it's important that a lot of people do is that, one, you can either start trying to secure your financing now. Get a fixed rate so that you can lock in a lower interest rate before interest rates increase even further. Another thing you can do is pay down any high interest debt. If you have any debt that has variable interest rates, meaning that the interest rate on that debt can change, it could potentially start increasing as the federal government increases their interest rates. It'll be so important to try as much as possible to pay down any high interest debt before interest rates increase even further. As a reminder, inflation is the general increase of prices over time. Usually in times of inflation, the federal government will increase interest rates to combat inflation and hopefully combat demand. Sometimes this can result in higher interest rates for lines of credit, debt, loans, things like that. It's going to be super important that you either one, try to secure financing now before interest rates get too high, or two, try to pay down any high interest rate debt before interest rates increase. So in conclusion, inflation is not fun for everybody. However, it is something that occurs naturally through the economy and is something that has been occurring for a very long time. The tricky thing is when inflation starts to happen a little too fast, that's when we as consumers really start to notice it. It's going to be super important as a small business owner that you keep inflation in mind to make sure that your small business can weather any storms or downturns in the economy. The top 3 things that I recommend that you consider is number 1, make sure that you're maintaining positive cash flow. Always keep track of how much cash your business is bringing in and how much cash your business is taking out. This will be important as inflation will potentially be increasing the prices of your supplies, materials, and the cost of creating your products and services. You want to make sure your cash flow is still strong. Next, consider your pricing strategy and reevaluate if the prices that you're charging for your products and services are realistic. If now you're paying more for materials and supplies and contract labor and shipping and delivery, does this mean that you will now need to revamp your pricing for your products and services? Definitely something you want to keep in mind. Lastly, financing. With high inflation comes higher interest rates as the government tries to crack down on these prices that are increasing so rapidly. This means that the cost to borrow money is going to increase significantly. You can either one, decide to try to secure any fixed rate debt now so that you can secure your loans before interest rates go up even further, or you can work on paying down any high interest debt. If you have a fixed rate debt, that means that your rate is fixed regardless of any changes to the federal rate. If you have a variable rate debt, that means that your rate can change and fluctuate depending on the current rate that the Federal Reserve has set. Inflation is scary, but at the end of the day, it happens all the time, and don't let it discourage you as a small business owner. As a reminder, my name is Olamide Tusa. I am the founder and CEO of Pachira Financials, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time.